Exactly.
Why don't we go back to running backs? I know in your board, it becomes just like, as I said, like 8 to then 17. We don't really see running backs emerge. But the ones that are kind of neck and neck there in that next tier of guys seems to be Trey Sermon and Michael Carter. They both enter pretty wide open depth charts as of this moment. So who do you like more? Who do you think emerges there? Do you think either could be a stud workhorse? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that I like Sermon a little bit better. And then his draft capital is better. He profiles more as like a 3-down guy or like at least a heavy workload type player. Michael Carter certainly could end up being one, but he played in a rotation in college and he's small. So, or at least smaller, even though he's not, I wouldn't say he's like small because, like Christian McCaffrey came in at like 205 or whatever. And so it's not like, you can't, it's not necessarily going to take him out of the running to be a 3-down guy. However, I just like Sermon a little bit more because he's got the size, he's got, a history of being able to like break tackles and just like be like a beast. Like the things that he was doing late in the season for Ohio State was like, wow, this guy, he finally kind of learned the scheme and kind of hit his stride and they rode him. Like even when Justin Fields was struggling, he was the guy for them and he carried that offense. And I think so that really is something that I look at. And when I look at this list, I'm like, man, I honestly could have him at like 12. I could have him as high as 12. And I've seen him go in first rounds, like in rookie drafts after the draft. And so, and I don't think that's like a reach really. So I think it's just a matter of, again, it goes back to how I build my rosters. Generally speaking, like I always just kind of give a slight nod to receivers because they last longer in the league and they carry, it's just easier to trade them in my opinion. So, maybe that's like kind of that bias leaking in here, but I think Sermon is a good prospect. 3rd rounder. I believe they traded up for him, which is always a good sign. That they had this conviction that they wanted him. It wasn't like, oh, okay, well, we got him here and we could take him. Like we want to go get this guy.
I think Shanahan even said that to him, right? Like we had to go get you, like when they were on the phone call. Yeah, so you love to see that for sure.
Absolutely. And Shanahan, he loves to run the ball. He wants to run the ball. He it's almost like it's like this devious, like he wants to make it a point. Like I can run the ball on you. Like I can run at will.
Yeah.
Try and stop me. You know what I mean? And so like, he's almost got like that sort of mentality, I think. And we've seen that show up, time and time again. And so I think there's certainly a chance he could end up, and I comped him to Todd Gurley stylistically because he can catch passes. He's kind of a gliding type guy. He's taller. I don't know if he's as talented as Gurley or as explosive. He's not. He's certainly not as explosive as Gurley was in his prime. But I think he's got short area bursts and good tackle breaking abilities. He's smooth and he can he can cut downhill and pick up chunk yards. But again, it's like with 49ers, you always just worry it's going to be a committee. They're going to ride the hot hand. Sermon was not an elite producer in college. He was a big time prospect, I believe, but like he bounced around. He started out at Oklahoma, ended up in a timeshare there, ended up transferring, went to Ohio State, took him a while to get going there. So it's like, he wasn't like this elite prospect. So it does have like this nagging worry in my mind. And he wasn't, generally speaking, considered like a top talent, I think, coming into this draft. He was like, I think, over 100 in the consensus big board by Arif Hassan. I can't remember exactly where he was, but I was higher on him than consensus. And even I'm like, maybe he's not like an elite talent. So we'll see. But it's a great landing spot in terms of their scheme. There is question marks on how heavily he'll be used in year one. And it's one of those things where it could end up being like a forever timeshare. And I'm a little bit worried about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Could be gross, but we have seen workhorses emerge from Shanahan. I know the recent history hasn't been pretty with that. And the 49ers have been, to kind of reinforce your point, that Shanahan loves to just enforce his will in the run game, like deviantly. Yeah. I love it. But third and first in overall team backfield points, even though we haven't had like a true stud emerge these last couple of years, the 49ers have been running that ball down people's throats, and fantasy production has been there. It just hasn't been very predictable who it's going to be. So if he does emerge as that guy, maybe he does finally become the next Arian Foster for Shanahan, or Clinton Portis, or these guys that had monstrous seasons in that zone blocking team.
Yeah, that's the dream.
And even if not, you had guys like Alfred Morris and Steve Slayton. I mean, dating back to Mike Shanahan, like Mike Anderson and nobody. So the scheme could be wonderful if he can take over, like truly astronomical ceiling. But there is that risk of the committees that we've been seeing so much of. Michael Carter does go to a similar scheme too, as we talked about. They're going to be trying to get that 49ers scheme in there. And, you know, that we've already seen some ridiculous one-handed grabs going all over the Twitter universe right now. And Thor, when he came on, said this is the best pass-catching guy. Everyone thinks it's ETN. This is the one that is the top pass-catching back in this offense. And he's already running with the ones. So, I mean, I originally did have Sermon higher, but I never want to overreact to OTAs in short season. But it does seem like there's a lot of buzz building for Carter. Are you seeing yourself potentially shifting those rankings ever, or are you firm with Sermon there?
That's tough. It's very tough. I think so. Going back to the very beginning, what we talked about, like draft capital is important, generally speaking. Like when you're a day 3 pick, it's so easy to replace you that it makes me worried about Carter's long-term standing as the starter. Like if he's the guy this year, it would not surprise me. And if he actually ends up being one of the more productive rookie backs, like that's not too surprising either. Yeah. The only question I have is like, is he talented enough to be like the guy for them long term? You know what I mean? And so I think that there's certainly a world in which he could be. And I actually I think I had him higher ranked than Sermon in my NFL draft guide rankings. So there's a little like cognitive dissonance there. I don't exactly know how to do this, but like honestly, I'm just going with the draft capital. Like, honestly, it's like he fell to day 3 for a reason. Generally speaking, day 3 running backs are not going to hit at a high rate. But however, he did fall into a great situation and he's already running with the ones. He's already like distinguishing himself. And so that's always a good thing. We'll see what happens when people start hitting and, you know, they have to have their offensive line actually blocking and things like that. But, you know, he's the type of guy who could factor in the passing game and on the ground. I loved his vision. I think that the thing that really stood out to me was, I don't know if you call it vision or what, but like his ability to like draft off an offensive lineman and kind of like pick his lanes and, you know, just know exactly when to stick his foot in the ground and get downhill versus bounce it outside or whatever. Like he had good instincts, I guess you'd call it, for making guys miss and picking up extra yards. So I really like Carter. I just worry about number 1, the draft capital, number 2, his size. And I guess those are the 2 question marks for him long term as like a dynasty asset. Is he going to be the guy for them long term? That's the only question. But I think he's talented, and I think the situation's great.
Absolutely. He did mention too in his post-draft presser that he's been playing in a zone blocking scheme since high school through college. And so that's kind of where those instincts, like that's perfect for what he's going to be entering as well, that they've truly been developed. And the team did say we were shocked he was there on day 3 and had to scoop him up as fast as we can. So maybe they had him
said the right things
than the draft capital. So we're all the buzz is right. We'll see if it lines up. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.